My guest is a professional gambler from Las Vegas. She's been featured on the Ringer Podcast Network, Poker Night in America, and the Gambling with an Edge podcast. I'm excited to welcome Gina Fiore.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit like just online and stuff, and I heard your podcast on the Ringer, and it's super good. Anybody listening or watching, like David Hill produces the podcast Gamblers, and it is like if you're into any kind of gambling whatsoever, you got to check it out. Gina was featured and asked her to come on today to just talk a little bit about her background in gambling and then just what she's been up to with her writing and website. So let's just jump right into it. Like, how long has it been since you've had a day job?
Oh man, 21 years, I think, 21 or 22
Did you
years.
expect that? Like, did you have
I
any idea?
I did expect it. When I quit my job, I thought I was going to make it because I didn't know any better.
Hmm.
So yeah, I expected it, but it's not likely. Like it wasn't likely to happen.
What year was it that you really got into it? Was you started with card counting, right?
I didn't quit my job till I knew more than card counting, but I learned how to count cards first. And then I learned some other stuff. And then I finally quit my job because I didn't think it was sustainable to gamble for a living if you just counted cards.
Hmm. Why was that?
It's not a big edge, and it's very easy to detect what you're doing, like in the casino. So I don't think the life of a card counter is very long. So and some people go and they count cards for a few years and they crush it and then they quit. I don't I don't know anyone that's been doing it for 20 years. I know some people that started out when I did, like on blackjack forums, or I met them in real life like 20 years ago. And I just saw a handful of them. We were all in the same room because there was a party. And there were like 6 or 7 of us that used to be on this blackjack forum called
Mhm.
bj21.com back in the day. And so we're all in this room, like 7 of us. And I'm just like, wow, we were all in our rooms on our computers, 20 years ago talking to each other. But all those people, back to the point, they're not counting cards. That's not why they stayed around. They started counting cards. It was a gateway drug, but that's not what anybody's doing now.
What is it? What did it lead to? Like, without giving away too much details on what they're doing, like, what are alternative options?
Um, some of them bet sports. Some of them, I was talking to one guy about playing craps, which I was super interested in because I hadn't heard his crap story before. So sports betting, other games, like you just figure out how to beat other games with other methods. What else are like slot machines,
Hmm.
online, like playing online casinos. What else have these guys been doing?
So let me ask for a second. Just you had
Yeah.
a background as a dealer, right? Like that was, and you
Mhm.
had a somewhat gambling family.
I was a dealer when I was 21, and my mom was a dealer when I was growing up. So she taught me how to deal cards, and I had nothing going on in my life, like nothing. So she's like, "Hey, you should be a dealer." I was like, "Okay." So she taught me how to deal cards, like at our kitchen table. And then I went to get a job, and I was used to being in the casino. It wasn't awkward. Like even when I was growing up, I have a friend that my best friend, I've known her for like 26, 27 years. And we both grew up in Vegas, and she'll still go in the casino and have that fear of being too close to the table. I don't know if you were ever in a casino when you were underage, but they tell you to like stand back 10 feet or whatever.
Hmm.
And she still has that. I'm like, it's okay. You're older now. But she still has that like feeling that the casino or blackjack is off limits. But I never felt that way. I was always very comfortable for whatever reason in the casino.
Did you like gambling? Like I feel like everybody gambling is such a weird thing in how you're introduced to it. Like I got into it basically when I was in college and it was when I was in Indiana and it was so like Bovada ran an ad for the Super Bowl that year or
Yeah.
Bodog at the time and it was before everything got shut down. So like how you're introduced to gambling, I mean in Vegas it's different, but like were you a gambler like from the beginning or
No, I no. So my mom used to deal We used to live in Lake Tahoe, and she was a dealer. And I would ride my bike to the casino at State Line. I'd run in, I'd wave, and I'd run out, and then I'd go to the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I guess, my first experience with casinos. It was just like not a big deal to me. And then the first time I played blackjack, it was in Mesquite because I was in a lounge band. I used to play guitar, and I was in a lounge band, and we had a 2-week gig in Mesquite. And so after the gig one night, we were playing $5 blackjack, and winning or losing $20, it was a lot. Like it felt like a lot. I didn't like it. You're up, you're down. It felt bad. And I don't think I gambled again till I was dealing blackjack. And then you see people win. I had a selection bias where I would see people win, and I thought they always won before they lost. I had this idea that they always won. So I thought, well, if I leave before I lose, I can make money. I can make extra money. So I would go to casinos on my days off. This is my first time like trying to gamble for a living. And I'd go to a casino, like I'd go to the Orleans, I'd walk in, I'd try to win $50. I'd try to win $50 and then leave before I lost it. This was my plan. So I'd go in the Orleans, I'd win $50, and I'd leave like the building, and I'd drive to another casino. And I remember I drove to Arizona Charlie's once. That was like my second or third stop. And I'm in there, and I see a guy that was also at the Orleans or Palace Station or wherever. And he goes, I know what you're doing. And I thought we were doing the same thing. I'm like, yeah, we're going around winning $50 everywhere.
That's so funny.
It's so stupid. But yeah, of course I lost. So I lost. It felt bad. And then I knew about card counting because my mom mentioned it to me when I was in high school. She said that people got kicked out of the Horseshoe where she was dealing for card counting, and she thought I'd be good at it. And I was in high school, so I'm like, okay. And then there was a guy at my job who was quitting, and when I asked him why, he said it was to count cards for a living, and it was like a complete like shift in. I don't even know how to say it. I just didn't know you could do that for a living. And as soon as he said that, I remembered that my mom said it, and I didn't know anything about it. And I just got obsessed with it because I hated my job. I'm like, okay, this guy's quitting to count cards for a living. Okay, I'm going to do that.
And was it like, if he can do it, I can definitely do it?
It was very much like this guy. Yeah, if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
He's going to do it. I'm doing it. Okay,
so how did you dive into it? And you went from counting to hole carding, which is very different. Right.
I mean, it is, but you're in the casino, so you start looking for edges in other ways. So I went online, bj21.com, like I just said, and there was a community there of card counters, and they'd answer your questions like for you, and they were very helpful. And then I got books. I would go to the Gamblers bookstore at the time, and I got a bunch of books. And I'd have, a bunch of cards. And I used to, when you count cards, you have to estimate how many cards are left in the deck to get your true count.
Mm-hmm.
So I was living in Palm Springs dealing, and I had a bed and like a computer. That was my furniture. And then on my counter, I had decks of cards. I had like 6 decks, 5.5 decks, 5 and 1/4. And it went like all the way down so that I could eyeball it. And then I had, my 2 decks and my 1 3/4 deck. And that was my counter. And I was obsessed with it. And I was just reading a lot, meeting people.
I mean, not to be like, I just can't imagine there were very many people like yourself in that situation. Yeah. Like it's usually like nerdy dudes, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of nerdy white guys. I met a lot of nerdy white guys with cargo pants.
Yeah.
Like the look of a card counter. Yeah.
So funny. I forgot to mention too, if you are watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe button, and throw a comment in for Gina or myself. Doing so helps us with the channel, helps us reach new people. So you went from counting it, like that's such a weird. You had just a bed and like what was it? A dorm room? Like what?
No, so it was a 2-bedroom. I had a 2-bedroom in Palm Springs, and I had. You walk in, there's a I know it was a 1-bedroom. Sorry. You walk in, there's the living room. You go down this hall, there's the bedroom. And I didn't like where the bedroom was. So I just put my bed in. When you walk in, there's my bed. Like it was a studio, but it wasn't. And I have pictures of it. I was just looking at pictures of it, and there's like my bed, this air conditioning unit like in the wall. It was a really terrible apartment, and my counter, and I had a computer. Eventually I got like a $90 desk at Walmart or something, but that was it. And I was just obsessed with it. Yeah, it
How was
sounds,
dating like with that? Like, was that like,
what was I doing in man, was I don't think I was dating anyone in an actual relationship in Palm Springs. Maybe because I was so obsessed. You know what? All the dealers used to go out after work downtown Palm Springs. I think it was called Zelda's. There was a club. I think it was called Zelda's downtown. So everybody would go to the club and they'd ask me to go. And I was just like, I don't want any part of this. It sounded horrible. I was also socially, I wasn't great socially. So I didn't go out. I just went home and studied card counting
what
and went online and talked to people.
what do you mean socially? Like, was there
I didn't want to be a dealer. I didn't want this life of like go to work, have 2 days off, and on your days off, go to Zelda's. Like I didn't want this. I just didn't want it.
I don't
I
think
wanted
anyone
out.
should, right? That sounds terrible.
And like I didn't know, I didn't have another out. Like I don't even know what I would have done. That was just what I chose. I'm like, I'm gonna do this. This is gonna get me out of the casino. I'm gonna make $10 million. I'm gonna semi-retire. This is what I'm doing.
Did you have
What
any
I thought.
thought to like what the retirement looked like?
Yeah, yeah. I was going to buy a ton of real estate. I was going to be 30. I was going to have $10 million. This was my thing. A ton of real estate. And I wanted a family. So I was going to have kids. This was the plan. And it didn't work out. And obviously I wasn't going to make 10 million. Not obviously, I guess I could have. But that was the plan. It kept me going. I was like, this is what I want to do. And I lived in LA after I left Palm Springs. And I love California. So I was like, I'm going to live here and have a bunch of real estate.
Why
Uh,
real estate?
I thought so. My dad had no money ever. Like we grew up broke, like completely broke, getting kicked out house. We're living in a motel. Like we had nothing. And my dad would always say, you can't go wrong with real estate. So that's the only advice that I think I ever got from them, and the only financial advice that I ever had in my back pocket. So that was the
Which
plan.
it's a little ironic you're taking financial advice from someone that's
And
like,
you look back,
you know,
well, yeah, you're like, what were you doing? And the thing is, I think about this. If I had anybody giving me direction in my life, because nobody did, I probably wouldn't have decided to be a professional gambler because it's so ridiculous. But I didn't have anyone, like nobody cared if I went to college. Nobody cared what I was doing. So I just picked this thing. And that was the only advice I got from my family that I used. Because I did end up buying a bunch of real estate in 2007, 2008.
and just got smoked.
I got so smoked. Yeah, I lost so much money.
I'm sorry. That fucking sucks.
Yeah, it sucked. I'm over it, but it sucked for a while.
Yeah, that's brutal. I was like chuckling while you were it's just this is such a weird path to get into, and
Yeah.
I've had like several poker players on and just like people in the sports betting industry come on, and no one had there's no like stock story of this is how I got into it. It's just it's the underlying thing usually is the person is very smart. They are socially like not able to fit in with
Yeah.
like society in certain ways, and they don't want to take like a boring slow path.
I mean, it was that. It was that. I mean, I was a young female, barely legal. So looking at me, I didn't fit the the type. Like, and people asked me to go to Zelda's. Like I seemed like I could socialize, but I didn't want to. And I wasn't good at socializing. That wasn't important to me. And yeah, I'm what you just described. I just didn't look like it, I guess. And I'm smart, but I'm not like some of these guys. I don't code. I don't, run Sims. I don't figure out the heavy stuff, but I'm smart, I guess. what you said fits me to some degree.
Yeah.
And
What
I
were
didn't
you
want to
doing
work.
besides like when you weren't counting cards and stuff? Like if you struggled just socially and stuff, what were your outlets?
I I didn't have it.
Were,
I played guitar for a long time, and that was like my thing, but I wasn't a natural. You ever see a musician and they hear it, they could play it. They're like a natural. Like I wasn't. I had to work really, really hard at it. And it was frustrating. And then when I found blackjack, that came natural to me. Like I got it.
yeah.
And so I just stopped playing. Like one day I stopped playing guitar and I never touched it again. And I was really into it. And I was like, I found this thing that I'm good at. And then I was playing poker. I was interested in poker. So I was playing at Morongo, like 1-2. No, I was playing like 2-4 limit at Morongo. And I think 4-8 limit was a big game, maybe 3-6. But I was doing that also, and I thought maybe I could get good at this too. But when I quit, I wasn't thinking about poker.
Hmm. Yeah. It's funny you say that because I grew up as a drummer and I like played guitar and stuff. And I never, like, I sucked at it. Like, as a comic now, like, I think comedy comes somewhat naturally, at least stand up does to me. Podcasting does not. But it, the, that natural sense of you're like, oh, this isn't hard. Like,
Yeah,
this
I worked. Yeah,
you just had some natural ability at something like it's it's just the best feeling, like
yeah,
to
yeah.
not be terrible at something.
Yeah, and you want to work harder at that thing that comes to you naturally. Like I became obsessed with advantage play and like finding an edge here, finding an edge there. And I was comfortable like going in the casino for 16 hours and waiting, or sitting at a baccarat table waiting hours for that one card to come out. I know which card's coming out. I know when it's coming out. I could do that naturally, and it wasn't work for me. But playing guitar, it was really hard. Like it was just hard, and I would go like there'd be other guitar players or whatever, and you have these jam sessions, and it just came so easily to them. And I went to school for music,
Yeah.
took a year off, and then I went to UNLV to major in music. And I was the worst. I was so bad. I was in a sight singing class and the teacher told me to
Fuck
quit.
that.
It's so bad.
That
It was
sounds
so bad.
terrible.
It was awful, and it makes you feel bad because you can't do it as well as these other people. It felt bad. So that
Being
ended.
bad amongst artists too is like just this horrible feeling.
Yeah.
I went to Mars Volta last night. I saw, like, I don't know if you listen to them at all, but
Yeah, yeah.
their guitarist is unreal. I was just watching him, like, I don't know how either somebody is just naturally like God given that talent, or all he did was practice guitar for like,
I mean, I'm sure both. Like when you're good at it, you want to practice more. Like nobody's just great because they were born with it. They obviously have to practice, but it comes easier to them. And music just didn't. And I love music. Like I
yeah,
love to watch good musicians. I love music. I'm still really into it. I just don't play anymore.
it's when you can't play though and you see somebody that great, it's just like so frustrating because it doesn't change how you feel about it. Like you obviously love doing it. It just,
Yeah.
yeah. So you said you carve, like you were always looking to carve out edges. Was that what led you to hole carding?
Yeah. Online, they would talk about hole carding as like the secret society, the next level maybe of like advantage play. I mean, hole carders don't even consider card counters advantage players. They look down on them. And it's just not hard. Card counting is not hard. I taught my 6-year-old how to count down a deck. Um, he's not ready to go in to
Yeah.
the casino and
Yeah.
play yet, but he can count down a deck. And I was so excited, so excited. But it's not that hard. So hole carding, if you hear about it and you've been in the casino counting or just dealing or whatever, you can't imagine getting a hole card. I don't know if people who watch this know what a hole card is.
Yeah. Can you explain just kind of high
Yeah,
level?
it's the down card. Like you're playing blackjack and there's one up card, the dealer has a 10 up, and then there's the hole card, the card underneath that you shouldn't know. You're not supposed to know. And so I'd hear about hole carding. I'm just like, how do you even get that card? How do you know what that card is? And then I made friends with a hole carder online who took me downtown one night, and he showed me one game. And I was like, I get it. I understand. I got it. And then I became obsessed with that, like finding other games.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how much of your work was in scouting games or like scouting dealers, and like what did that process look like?
It's just walking around, looking at dealers, sometimes taking a seat. It matters. Usually the dealer isn't like dealing, and then they go to deal their whole card and they're just like this, like a billboard game where they're just like, this is my whole card. Usually they're dealing and it looks normal, but they just leave a pocket, like a pocket of air, like just a little pocket. And you just, you're not on the floor, you're not doing something insane to get the card. You just recognize this little pocket, and then you know where to look, and you see a flash, and you usually don't get the whole card. You usually don't get the entire card. You just get a flash, and then you figure out what that might be, and then you have a strategy. So it was a lot of walking, and I would have like paper lists of dealers. Like I'd have my dealers and when they worked, and I'd have that in my bag, and I'd check them in order of how good they are, and I would just go around doing that every day. And then you add to your list. You might trade a dealer with another hole carder and share names or something.
Was there like an ideal dealer you were looking for, like certain, without giving too much away? I don't want to like step on anybody or take food off anyone's plate, but
yeah, a type of dealer. Well, I mean, you want a dealer that doesn't look obvious, and you want hopefully a place that takes action. Like there's a big difference between finding a dealer at El Cortez where you bet green and they're just like, what's going on? Call surveillance, or finding a dealer at the Bellagio. Like there's a huge difference. So you want a dealer that's not obvious in a casino, that's not going to sweat the action. That's ideal.
Yeah. How much action, or like how much did it take to raise red flags in like smaller casinos? Because that just doesn't make sense to me. If you're sitting down and like, aren't you flat betting most of the time?
Yeah, but like if you go in El Cortez, nobody goes in there to bet black. They're not at the El Cortez. So if you bet black and you're a nerdy white guy, like just forget about it.
Really?
And if you're me at 20, in my 20s betting black, 20s, 30s, whatever, I don't look like I should have money. So people are like, why are you here betting black? So then they get suspicious. And even though you're flat betting, you're not going to get heat like a card counter up and down with their bets, but they're going to look at how you play, and you're going to stand on your 13 versus a 10 up because, they have like a 4 in the hole. So things like that, they could put it together.
And then do they kick you out?
Yeah, they'll say, so card counters have it a little bit easier. They'll say, my dog is right.
You're fine.
They'll say like, you're too good for us, or no more blackjack, or just usually you'll get a back off too, like don't come back. But hole carders, they take sometimes offense to. So, I've been like chased out of casinos where I'm running and someone's running behind me like a security guard. I've been in the back room where they just throw you in the back room and deal with it later. Like you deal with it later. Like it's not illegal. Like I don't do anything illegal, but they get more mad when you're hole carding or doing more advanced plays. So they might just say no more blackjack, or they might bring like 5 security guards to like walk you out and read you the trespass act. Hopefully you get out before that happens. Hopefully you feel it and you leave. There's I was in Atlantic City. Atlantic City has a law where they can't like kick out advantage players. They could take measures to counteract their play. Like they can make the table minimum like $5, or sorry, table max like $5, if they know what you're doing. And I remember I went into Bally's one night, and we weren't hole carding. We were doing something else. But I go into Bally's, it's Saturday night, and I sit down, and the floorman comes to me. He's like, Gina, I don't want to deal with this. It's Saturday night. And I was like, okay. So I just left. And it was very funny that he was so like human. It was like a very human interaction. He's like, and he called me by my name. He's like, really, you have to be in here right now. I was like, okay, I'll leave. I'll try again tomorrow when you're not here. So he was nice, but usually they're not.
It's such a different thing from sports betting too, where like I worked for Canner Gaming, and it was right when we introduced like Sports Screen, and they had initially like set these like huge limits. They're like, we'll take a bet up to $1 million. And like, this was before I got there. And
Yeah.
I started working for Las Vegas Sports Consultants, which got bought by Canner. So like, it was all under that umbrella. So I saw kind of two sides of the business, but there was a definite, from my experience there was a definite like, here is the limit for the average person, and then here are the limits for a sports better. And they
Right.
were substantially lower, like
Right. And that
substantial.
happened.
But like for card count, like they just throw people out. They don't even take any of the action, which is kind of crazy to me.
Right. Sports betting, the book won't like come around the counter and backroom you or say you're too good for us. They just won't let you bet. It's very different for
Or
sure.
just like make it not worth your time to.
Right. They'll give
You
you
know.
like $10 limits. You're just like, what happened?
But I think it's weird that they wouldn't want that information too. Like if you have a dealer that's potentially sloppy like that, like it probably would help the casino. Like,
Yeah. So a smart surveillance guy should see you playing a game. And here's something that happens. You'll go into a casino and you have heat. So they're looking for you. And instead of letting you scout and see where you sit, they'll just back you off. They'll come down and throw you out. But if they're smart, they'll be like, okay, where is she going to sit? Okay, that dealer we need to fix. And I was just talking to a guy that consults for an offshore. And he was telling me that in a big offshore that they profile bettors, and they won't, they'll take the bets and then they'll change the lines, based on what they bet, but they won't ever back that better off. Like I was having this conversation and there aren't that many that they had profiled to be that sharp, but they'll take the bet and then they've got the little, alert, whatever it is, change the line. And so that's another, I think that's smart. I think that's smart of them.
yeah, I think Pinnacle is probably the best at doing, or has the best reputation. It's Chris and Pinnacle are the two that like are known for moving the market.
Right.
And they have the lowest VIG too. So it's like from what I remember.
They should have the sharpest lines. When I started sports betting, one thing I would do, this was after I had my son, I couldn't travel as much and I couldn't work in the casino as much as I used to. So I started betting, and I would just I found a book that was so bad compared to Pinnacle. Basically, I was sitting at home and I had Pinnacle on one screen and I had this, Bob's sports betting site, whatever. And I would just compare the lines all day. And I decided if it's this bad, I'm going to bet. So I did that for like 2 seasons of baseball. And the hardest part about it was getting more outs, because I knew that like Bob's book was the bad one. So I'd go find outs and I didn't know if they had the same lines as I was using. So I'd just have to get a ton of them. And then I'd find the book that matched Bob's original book or whatever. I would just sit at home and compare to Pinnacle for, I was live betting. So I would just sit at home while the games were going on and do that. And that was my job for, among other things, but I was doing that a lot. That's how I started.
So live was where you got the most.
I was live betting, and the lines were just so bad compared to Pinnacle. And then it was a matter, and then you have to balance, like, how much can I win and still get paid before I win so much? And they're just like, we're not paying you. So, and that's harder to do. You can do that in blackjack. You can go to a casino and say, I know at 20K win, they're going to freak out. So I'm going to win 19,000 and get out the door. But when you're betting, it's harder to gauge, because there were different bookies and they have different, what's it called? Like tolerance levels. So I might be more conservative with the bookies because I want to get paid. So I might win a little less than maybe I was able to.
Yeah,
it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, it's tricky. And for anyone listening that doesn't know, like Pinnacle and Chris, those are both offshore sites that I think they started basically when everything in the US was like no sports betting was allowed in the US online. Like if I'm
I don't,
because there
I
was
don't know.
WSEX was like the big 1998. I want to say there was a big push to have like an online sports exchange where like you would buy one team and somebody would buy the other team and it would
Yeah,
match
yeah.
up bets and stuff. But yeah, these two are two of the biggest offshore books, and Pinnacle I think is in the UK. Like they're in.
Really, I don't know. I don't even want to say the history of sports betting, and I thought they were in South America.
I
I
think
guess
they're
I'm
in
wrong.
Costa Rica. That
Yeah, that's what I
or
thought. Yeah, I don't want to even get into the history of it. Like if we talk about blackjack or advantage play, I know what I'm talking about.
mhm.
In sports betting, at least I know what I'm talking about to an extent. And I hate to say something that I don't know. Like I don't know when Pinnacle started. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I being in the industry for a period of time, like I know some of that stuff,
Mhm.
and it's definitely got friends that like do sports betting stuff. But I did. You've been working with the unabated screen and had talked to me a little bit about it. I dove into it. Like it's
Did you?
pretty cool. Yeah, it's. Can
Really
you
cool. And
explain it to like anybody that's into sports betting or curious about it?
yeah, unabated.com. I just signed on to like collaborate with them. And I have so sports betting is exploding right now in the US. Like there's more sites, I'm sorry, there's more states that have legal sports betting than there aren't. So I started collaborating with Unabated because like Captain Jack is an owner of Unabated, a founder, and he was on BJ21 2 decades ago. So I've known him forever. And then Rufus Peabody is also part of Unabated, and I'm friends with him, and also he's one of the best bettors in the world. So it's a website. This is how I look at it. It's like a training site. Like you have poker training sites. I look at Unabated as like a sports betting training site. It's educational, even for me. Like I've bet and I've been a winning bettor, but I can go online and I can see like the different edges and different lines. Somebody offers over 52, somebody offers over 51 and a half. I can say, well, the 52 is better because it's minus 110
And who was on
compared
the
to
front end of developing this?
it was Rufus. So Rufus Peabody did the intellectual property for it.
And then
And he's one of the best bettors.
Captain Jack.
And Captain Jack is also a great sports bettor. And he's like an encyclopedia of knowledge on how things work behind the scenes. And he's really good at walking you through the tools. Like you can put in information for season win probabilities of teams. And so they have this, God, I'm so bad at this.
Let
What am I
me
trying?
let me try and help a little bit. Like so like
Like I know what it does. Like you put in the power rankings and then it'll spit out like what the teams are, how many games they're supposed to win that season, and it changes week by week, right?
mhm.
And so they have this tool that will change the odds week by week for the teams, but then you have sports books who have stale lines because they put up, the price at the beginning of the season and they don't really change it. So they have a tool where you can just input this data that they provide, like they provide the power rankings, and then you get the updated information and you just find the stale line and then you bet it. So there's that too.
Yeah, it's I think this from what I've seen of it, I spent like, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours looking at it.
Yeah.
It is it makes complete sense to me that Rufus is the one behind it. Just
Right.
from like I saw him at MIT. I went to the sports analytics conference like
Yeah.
in 2012 and he's easily like I mean, I don't know how many people really, in terms of like true line generators, there are that exist. Rufus is in the top 5 or top 10 that I know of. And
Yeah.
it's a comprehensive tool that helps like anybody that bets on sports do so to like keep a long-term advantage and do so in like a clean, objective, logical way. It's not when people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you used to work in sports, like in this industry." sports betting, they're like, oh, I like sports. I want to get into it. I'm on DraftKings or whatever. And they start talking to me, and it's all of the basic mistakes that I've been hearing about for 15 years.
Right. And Unabated brings you a little bit, the books are here, new sports bettors here, and it brings it a little bit closer. Like the battle between the two, it just lessens the disadvantage that you have. It's sort of like blackjack. If you sorry, sort of like blackjack, where if you have a basic strategy, basic strategy, your edge is going to be, the house is going to have less of a house edge, rather than the guy that stands on 15 versus 10 because he has a feeling. So it brings the two a little bit closer together.
I mean, you could be a winning player if you use those tools. From what I saw, you might get backed off, but
you might get limited. And then it's like the art of getting more outs, or even the art of like using cover on a sport. Like if you're betting single game parlays or something like that, but you're also betting sharp information, you might last a little longer. You kind of have to, and this is where networking comes in, like learn what the book can tolerate, and then stay under that for as long as you can. And then there's also like, you just want to fire away and get in what you can, and then lose the book and find another out. So, and part of the reason that I said I'd collaborate with Unabated is because I know I'm going to have to deep dive like all the tools, and I'm going to have to learn, and it's going to make me money that way. Like I have a deal with them, but also I'm going to, sweat Rufus or sweat Captain Jack, and I'm going to learn more, which is a huge part of why I'm collaborating with them. And I had sort of, I was self-conscious about, like, I never want to promote a casino ever, because people lose, and most sports bettors are going to lose. Like, I'm not promoting you learn how to bet. You're going to lose probably. But if you want to like geek out on the intricacies, or like how to win betting, or just get better at the basic strategy, let's call it, you should use Unabated. But anyway, so I was self-conscious about anyone calling me a tout or promoting sports betting. And so I took a poll on Twitter, like, do you think being a winning sports bettor is closer to poker or closer to like slot machines? Like, which one? And like 75% of people, it was like 1,600 people, took the poll, thought sports betting was closer to poker. It was like a skill game, which is how I look at it. So I felt a little bit better about signing on with Unabated and saying I'd promote Unabated.
It's a great tool, and you can make money through ARBs on that tool. Like, for anybody who doesn't want to bet on sports but wants to scrape data, like, it's a great tool, that because there's different like types of sports bettors. There are people that are going out that are like betting specific games and sides and things like that. And then there are people that are shopping lines. And if you're just looking to shop lines and get price discrepancies, you can make money with that tool. And it's very like, it's probably the most organized, functional tool that I've seen.
For sure. I don't even think they have competition. I don't even know who to say is a competitor Unabated. You have other odds screens?
Yeah, Chad Millman's thing.
What is that?
I don't know the name off of the top of my head, but they've had something similar, but not with like the calculators, the derivative calculators. Like, there's stuff that if you're a live in-game player, you could do serious damage with those tools.
Right. And arbing is great. I'm not knocking arbing at all, but it doesn't take a lot of skill.
For sure. I'm stoked that you're doing it. I think it's really cool. And if there's anything I can do to help, like, I haven't really been, I think I got into sports betting in like 2010. I had a weird like pull into the business side of it. And I just remember being obsessed with like, how do they get these numbers? And then when I went to LVSC, one of the guys I was working with, like, he was explaining to me so much behind like what the value of 3 is in a football game, and the value of 7 in a football game. And when he started breaking it down, he showed me they had all like years and years of historical data where they said, for college football games, this is the percentage time that a game falls on 3 versus game on 7 or 10 or whatever. So like when they're moving those numbers and you're betting on sports, there's like a big reason why that number is 3 and why that number is 6.5 versus 7. And like if you don't understand that stuff, you're gonna get smoked. Like it's
Yeah.
not a matter of like being into sports and knowing sports or whatever. It's
Yeah.
math.
Following a team and like thinking you know better than whoever's making the line. And the other thing with Unabated is they have a bunch of videos that explain all of these things. And Captain Jack does most of those. And he just explains things so well. So you can just look up, you know, long teasers or how to use the props 2.0 screen, whatever you need. Like he's got a video for it. And Captain Jack, part of the reason they like brought me on is because I they want me to do videos, and I feel like I might be able to explain to someone who's doesn't know as much as Captain Jack in a better way. Like I don't want to say dumb it down because people aren't dumb, but like I learn when things are dumbed down. So I think I can explain that maybe better than Captain Jack or definitely Rufus, who talks at a higher level. You're just like, what are they saying? Like, they might say, input the power rankings, blah, 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 and you'll get this. And I'm like, people don't know what a power ranking is. Like you have to go really, and the thing is, no sharp bettor is going to go to Unabated and read a really simple directions and be turned off and say this is stupid. But you're going to get novice bettors that go there and read an explanation for how to use the tool with words they don't understand, and they're going to be intimidated. And so I think maybe I'll be able to explain it a little easier.
It's got to be better than what currently exists in the sports.
Well,
But I mean, because the language itself, like, was created amongst bettors. So, like, most of the time you go in, people are like, what is this? What is this? And they get turned off. And the books are the ones that benefit from that. Like, people's lack of knowledge and understanding is why, I mean, people are losing 10% on a dollar versus 5% on a dollar. And if you bet every Saturday, you're going to get smoked. And like, it's not people like are so casual about it. Like, oh yeah, I bet football or whatever. And at the end of the season, I guarantee you the majority of them are down a lot. And it stops being like just a joke or whatever when you're losing like 2, 5, 10 grand a year. And if there are these tools that help people out, like I respect what Rufus doesn't need to do this. Like Jack doesn't need to do. And
that's another thing. Like they're given a hard time online for starting Unabated, and people will say, they can't make money anymore. So they have to do this site, this other thing, because they're not making money. But it's not like, I know them, they're still crushing. It's just, you're in the business for a really long time and you want to do something new, but all you know is gambling. So you're going to do something gambling adjacent. And gambling is a very lonely profession. So you have this group of guys that like each other and they want to work together. And people don't put value on that. Just working with people you like to work with and being around them. And, Rufus isn't making these tools and killing his career. Like that's not happening. He's doing something else, gambling adjacent, that he likes to do with people he likes to do it with. And that's fine, but they get a hard time a lot online.
And I know, I mean, at least in an interview I heard with him, he was talking about developing or being part of a couple different activist groups to help people with gambling.
I think is that Rufus? I know Captain Jack is involved in being I don't even know what to say, like the figurehead for the sports bettor to like, what's the word I'm looking for, to speak for them or to try to get them a better deal with the sports books. I can't think of the word. Rufus is an advocate. Rufus is an advocate for like mental health within the gambling community. Like he's really into, this is a lonely profession and it can mess with your mental health, and I want to help people in that way. So Unabated just started a channel in their Discord about like mental health, or somewhere you can talk about how you're feeling. So that's Rufus's thing. And then Captain Jack is like an advocate for the sports bettor, just the average guy. And like sports books will take advantage of them by like not paying them for whatever reason. And Captain Jack's the guy that will go in there and say, you know, these are your rules. They played by your rules. You have to pay them, stuff like that. I was having dinner the other day with Rufus and Roxy Roxborough.
Yeah.
And
He was the guy that founded LVSC.
yeah, I like him. He sent me a message on Twitter once that he liked my blog. And I was like, you read my blog. It was very odd to get that from him, but I was having dinner with them and part of the conversation was, so did he graduate? He graduated high school and I asked him what math background he had and he doesn't really have one. And he said he just hires like smart people, or that's, you know, what he did. And so Rufus, and he agreed that it's what you ask. It's the questions you ask that get you the answer, like the out of the box, this actually matters. I'm going to put that into this equation. And it makes sense. And that's how you get a different opinion than the norm. And now it's whether that opinion is like the right opinion, and nobody else asked that question. And so they're having a conversation about that, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It's just at 3x speed and you're just sitting there trying to keep up with it. like
Yeah.
There's something about sports bettors that are just that way. It's like, how quickly can we spit out the information at each other in an argument?
Yeah, it's different too with sports bettors versus like hanging out with blackjack players. I think sports bettors are better socially, which has nothing to do with what you just said, but just in general, I think they're better socially than like advantage players. Yeah, that's a I don't know, that's a big difference.
It's funny that you said that stuff though about like those asking those questions.
Yeah.
Because I got into stand up like 4 years ago, and there's some weird parallels with stand up and sports betting and just in gambling in general, where you don't really have any, like, you're out on this ocean and you don't have any kind of, like, the audience changes every night. The time of the show changes most of the time, where you're doing the show, how you're feeling. Like, there's all of these variables that constantly change. So you have to draw some kind of conclusion about certain things and then like kind of test out and be like, oh, okay, well, that's what happens when, or, and you, over time, you kind of get a feel for certain things, but then you have if you're in a room that you haven't been in before, you draw an assumption and then you're like, oh, I really screwed. Like, that was not a good assumption. And then there's also elements of like just you being off yourself, or not like, you know, you to go up there and perform the same way every time or the same level every time. It's not, there's the human factor of it.
You have to adapt. Like, you have to adapt in any form of gambling. Like, you have to adapt either because you have new information or because your spot is dead. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do now? So you have to adapt. And I guess that's true in a lot of professions.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying, like, we talked about it before, you should try stand up. I think you'd be good at it.
I would like to do like a story slam or something like that, like a mock type sort of thing. But, you know, we're doing this interview and I can't find the words for like anything. Granted, I just woke up before we started talking, so I'm not fully there, but yeah, I don't have the words for a lot of things. So if I did do a story slam, I don't think I'd be good at stand up because I lose my train of thought often and I can't think of words. Like, if somebody talked to me from the audience, I'd freeze, but then afterwards I'd have like 10 things
the thing that you want to say to them.
So at least if I'm like doing a story, I created it beforehand. Even when I write a blog post and it's like 800 words, that took me 8 hours.
Really?
It took me 8 hours to like find the right words I wanted to use, edit it. Yeah. It takes me a long time to get out what I want to say.
I would push back and just say you've had an incredibly interesting life. So maybe like the execution isn't there yet, but like with chops, that stuff will come. Like, the more you do it, the more it'll come natural.
I'm sure. Like,
you have amazing stories that like in these life experiences that people that maybe they spent their whole life telling stories, but those stories were boring stories. Like it's just the craft of it a little bit. So
Right.
what is
Yeah.
your blog for people that are interested and want to check it out?
It's on rxgamble.com, and I write about gambling, and then I write about just regular, like being a mom or relationships. I call it like a gambling relationship blog. And I kind of tie the two together. I don't get anything from it other than I have something that I want to say. And so I have to say it somewhere. So I just write it, and then hopefully I can entertain somebody for a couple minutes.
It's good. Yeah, I've read it a handful of times now, and it's definitely like it's a blend of a lot of different things. So I like it quite a bit.
Yeah. It's there's so much content out there that it's almost like egotistical to think that you can put content out there and somebody wants to like read it or watch it or whatever it is. So I feel like I have to do it just for myself, and then when somebody says that they liked it or they send me a message, like it makes me feel really good.
Oh, for sure. This is like episode 150 we've done basically, and
Yeah.
I before getting into podcasting, like I just had no idea of how many podcasts
Podcasts there
there
are.
are, and like
Yeah.
why did I think this was going to be like crazy, original or something? But
Yeah.
it's been super fun. Like I listened to that episode of you probably 3 years ago on that
Mhm.
podcast, and it was like dead of night driving through Utah, and it was just
Yeah.
it's an incredible story. Like you talked about some of the stuff that we talked about today. So if anybody hasn't heard that, make sure to check it out. But did you have a story you wanted to tell today for the story segment?
If this story is bad, if I do this story as bad as I explained unabated, we're gonna cut it.
Okay.
I have some European friends. They're Greek and they're advantage players, but they also play poker. And one of the guys was telling me that a friend of his was second in chips in a tournament, and he was finally getting lucky. Like this guy, my friend, was finally getting lucky, and then he said I stacked him. I was like, what? I was like, did he rebuy? He's like, no, I stacked him. I was like, how did you stack? Like he's second in chips. I'm like, I don't understand. And he always says, he calls me Gina, but he's like, Gina, like he's Greek, and that's how he's like, Gina, I stacked him. I'm getting lucky. I was like, what? He's still in the tournament. Like he's second. Like, what are you talking about? I'm so confused. And he's getting really angry. And another Greek guy, another friend of ours, like yells at him in Greek, says something that I don't understand. And then the original guy, he turns to me and he says, I staked him. I staked him. That's the story. That's it. But I laugh every time I think about it.
Yeah.
Gina, I staked him. Like I was the stupid one.
That's funny.
That's
God
my
damn.
story.
No,
If you play
that's
poker, that'll be funny. If you
I,
don't, you're just like, what was that?
I don't play personally, but I do know some of the people watching and listening do. So
Yeah.
definitely look, it's
It
inside
had to be
gambling
there.
stuff. We need to cover a bunch of random stuff related to gambling. So, is there anything you do want to plug, like just for people to follow your stuff, or like where can people learn more about you?
No, I have a blog called rxgamble.com, and I'm writing a book. I think I'll be done with it by the end of the year. And I have on my blog, just, put your email in and I'll let you know when the book's done. And I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to, try to sell you anything else. Just give me your email. I'll let you know when the book's done. It's basically going to be my blog, but more words. Like it's going to be a lot more stories and a little bit more in depth. So that'll be done by the end of the year.
Sounds good. And please, like, if you can, let me know because I'd love to like promote it just to anybody that
That'd be
listens
great.
to this and checks it out and just on social media and stuff. And
Yeah.
it,
If somebody told me like I get asked to go on podcasts often just
mhm.
because gambling is so popular right now and I'm a female gambler, right? And I've been saying no a lot because I don't have anything new to talk about. I'm like, well, I'm not selling anything. I don't have anything new to talk about. But then when you asked me, I didn't think this would be like super heavy gambling. And so I was like, yeah, we can talk about something else, which we didn't, which is fine.
Yeah.
We talked about Jake for a second. But yeah, somebody told me you should wait till your book is done to go plug it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just hopefully have you drop it
Yeah,
when
for
it's
sure. And I'm planning on coming down to Vegas at some point in the next 6 months. Like, I'd love to just like hang out a little bit, maybe have you
yeah.
come to a show or something. And
Oh, is that what you're coming for, to
yeah,
go to do a show?
yeah, my buddy's down there, so hopefully I can stay with him, but just like, I want to get into that market so I can start performing down there a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully next time I come down there, we can meet up, and that'd be fun. I do, just for the pod quick, I got to say, thanks again, everybody, for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to rate and review us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that notifications bell so you don't miss our upcoming content. Throw a comment in for Gina or myself. And as always, just make sure you follow us on Instagram at FNFPod. We're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. My wave pool, my wave pool. Welcome to 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 my wave pool, my wave pool.